Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Criterion Corner. I've had a lot of fun making these videos and having an excuse to nerd out about Criterion Collection films that I really love. I think Criterion is a really great platform that really gives these directors the ability to let audiences see the films in the format and the original way that they're intended, with some really cool behind the scenes footage and things that you might not get to see on a traditional Blu-ray release. And I have a lot of fun getting to visit these films, look at them in detail, and kind of give some recommendations to you guys as to ones that I think are worth watching. I have a pretty extensive Criterion collection, and so I think this is just a lot of fun, and I'm really having a good time doing these. So without further ado, today's Criterion pick is going to be Lars von Trier's Antichrist. Antichrist is directed by Lars von Trier. A grieving couple retreats to their cabin, Eden, in the woods, hoping to repair their broken hearts and troubled marriage. But nature takes its course as things go from bad to worse. This is a Lars von Trier film, and if you're not familiar with Lars von Trier, his films are incredibly bleak. He's a very polarizing individual. He said some things throughout his career that are incredibly idiotic. He said some things that I think in specific context that he thought he was trying to make a point, but he just kind of opened his mouth and garbage flowed out, and he said some really stupid shit. And I acknowledge that as far as like him as a person. But what I also acknowledge is that he is a genius when it comes to filmmaking. There's something about his specific style and presentation of his films that are unlike any other filmmaker I've ever seen. Sometimes he can be a little self-indulgent. In the nicest way of saying it, he can jerk himself off a lot, especially early in his career and with his first few films that are really impactful and deeply meaningful. There's a lot less of that. And I feel like he was establishing a style to where now, later in his career, he's definitely kind of into himself a lot. Although I know a lot of people criticize The House That Jack Built, and I really enjoyed that film. I think it's really great, despite some of the self-indulgent references to his own films, which was a little wild to watch, but whatever. But this film, very simply, is about a husband and wife couple who lose their child. Their child dies in the first 2 minutes of the film, and they go to this cabin together in the woods, and they go to hash out their issues and to try to figure out what's going on to see if they can rekindle their marriage, because losing their child completely shatters and rocks their world. The first thing I want to talk about in this movie in particular is the cinematography. Von Trier has some of the most incredible cinematography in all of his films that I've ever seen, despite making Dancer in the Dark, which has some of the ugliest cinematography I've ever seen. But that movie, the cinematography is very purposeful. There's a reason why it looks so ugly and grimy, and I'm appreciative for it more now when I look at his career overall. But Antichrist in particular, and Melancholia, and even The House That Jack Built, he does these scenes where the frame rate is slowed down to where things happen in slow motion in particular scenes, and it really gives you this like almost picturesque painting looking image that you're viewing as an audience member that is just so hypnotizing and gorgeous that you can't look away. And even if whatever you're seeing on screen is incredibly horrific and disturbing, you can't help but look because of just how amazing it's presented to you. And what I love about Antichrist in particular is this movie is literally two characters in an isolated space the entire film. There's no one else. It's just these two incredible actors giving amazing performances back and forth. And it really immerses you in the fact that he's able to make landscapes outside of this cabin so lush and immersive, and like give you this feeling of isolation where there is no safe space for these characters to hide. They have to let everything come to life, so to speak, about this situation and this horrible thing that's happened to these two people, and kind of see how that toys with their psyche and whether they blame one another for it or how they view each other for it, and the dialogue between the two of them and how things slowly start to fall out of control over time just makes for a really fascinating watch. Willem Dafoe and Charlotte Gainsbourg are the two leads in this film, and they are amazing. Willem Dafoe consistently grows as one of my favorite actors in Hollywood, and Charlotte Gainsbourg is incredible in everything that she's in. She's just so dedicated to the performance, and these two really give this feeling of this married couple who have gone through this traumatic event together and are trying to make the best out of the situation that has happened to the two of them. And it is just like earth-shattering to watch this movie. It goes in a direction that I would never have expected. I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to talk too much about it because I feel like there's a lot of themes in this movie that you can pull apart and dissect piece by piece and look at through a unique lens, especially where the third act goes and how brutally and disturbingly violent it gets. And I talked about this in some previous videos. I am one who I'm okay with violence in films as long as it has an artistic purpose. I feel like there is a point in this movie that Von Trier just gets violent for the sake of kind of grossing the audience out a little bit. But for the most part, I feel like the violence in this movie is warranted enough to kind of convey this message that it's going towards. And this movie is very nihilistic. It doesn't have a very positive outlook on human beings as a whole, at least in my perspective. It doesn't. By the end of this film, it's not like you're grinning from ear to ear and thinking, wow, this is amazing. It's more of like a bleak, sort of nihilistic look at this relationship and relationships as a whole, and you know, something that the loss of a child can do to a family, tear each other apart, and the poison that it can become when it comes to blaming one another, and how something like that can trigger more events that cause you to look at the other person through a new lens, and other things start to unravel, which cause the relationship to become more toxic and more volatile. And that's what I like about this movie, is rather than it just be blatant, stupid expositional dialogue to kind of look at you and say, that's what I'm going for with this movie. It's these weird, kind of ethereal interactions with these characters that feel unnatural at times. And by the time the third act comes around, and the brutality and the violence and the disturbing nature of the imagery that you as the audience member are subjected to, you really kind of get the feel for what Von Trier's going for and kind of his view on life, which if you've ever seen Melancholia, you are aware that he does not have a very optimistic outlook on society or the world as a whole. And yeah, I think this movie is an incredibly unique experience. It's not for someone who does not do well around violence. There would be some imagery in this movie that would probably make you very, very uncomfortable. But I think this movie is a work of genius. The more I see it, the more I appreciate it. And this is my recommendation. If you're into weird, fucked up, psychological, traumatic films, I would 100% recommend this to you immediately. So have you seen Antichrist? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. I think this movie is brilliant. It's not even my favorite Von Trier film, but it's phenomenal, and I understand completely why it is in the collection. As always, if you'd like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot, lets me know the type of content you're looking for, like the Criterion Corner. I'm having a lot of fun making these videos. I really enjoy talking about Criterion Collection films. I'm a big fan of the collection. I always look forward to whatever they have to release, and I look forward to putting out more episodes in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.